So, how does an empire that lasted 1,500 years, the last living piece of ancient Rome, just fall? And not just fall, but fall in only 53 days. Today, we're jumping into one of the most critical moments in all of history, the fall of Constantinople in 1453. This is an incredible story of impossible odds, game-changing technology, and a single battle that literally changed the map of the world. Let's get into it. All right, so picture this. The year is 1453. You've got the Byzantine Empire, which is really just a shadow of what it once was, led by its Emperor Constantine XI. And on the other side, you have the hungry, rising Ottoman Empire, led by a brilliant and ambitious 21-year-old Sultan Mehmed II. The stage was absolutely set for a clash of titans. And when I say a clash, I mean a serious David versus Goliath situation. The odds were just insane. The defenders inside Constantinople had maybe 7,000 men total. That's a mix of actual soldiers and civilians who could pick up a weapon. Facing them, an Ottoman army that might have been as big as 80,000 strong. I mean, the numbers alone tell you this was a desperate, almost hopeless fight for survival. And this map, wow, it just says it all, doesn't it? By 1453, the mighty Roman Empire, which once controlled most of the known world, was basically just the city of Constantinople. Look at it, that little speck of purple in a giant sea of Ottoman green. They were completely, totally, and utterly alone. But, the Byzantines had an ace up their sleeve. They had one really, really good reason to believe they could actually win this thing. Constantinople wasn't just any city. For centuries, it was known as the best defended city in the entire world. For 800 years, the city's main defenses had never been breached by an enemy. Sure, it was captured once by crusaders from the inside, but since they took it back in 1261, no outside attacker had ever broken through those walls. Empires rose and fell, sieges came and went, but the city always held. And the reason why? The Theodosian walls. These things were a legend of military engineering. It wasn't just one wall, it was a whole system. A deep moat, a small outer wall, and then a massive inner wall with huge towers. It was a fortress that was seemingly impossible to crack. And they weren't just safe on land. To protect their harbor, the Golden Horn, they had this simple but genius defense. They would stretch a massive iron chain across the mouth of the harbor. No enemy ship could get past it, period. It could stop an entire fleet cold. So you see, the city felt pretty secure from every angle. But that 21-year-old Sultan Mehmed II, he wasn't playing by the old rules. He knew that if you wanted to take an unbreakable city, you had to completely change the game. And that was the real question he was facing, right? How do you take down walls that have stood for 1,000 years? How do you get past defenses that have stopped every army before you? Well, his answer wasn't just going to win him a city. It was going to kickstart a whole new era of war. So part one of Mehmed's answer was gunpowder. But we're not talking about regular old cannons. Oh no. Mehmed hired a Hungarian engineer named Orban to build him what were essentially super cannons. These things were absolute monsters. Just to give you an idea of the power we're talking about, a single cannonball could weigh over 1,100 pounds. That's 500 kilograms. These weren't designed to just chip away at stone. They were designed to literally shatter fortifications that were built to last forever. In fact, the cannon maker himself, Orban, supposedly boasted to the Sultan that his creations could blast down the walls of Babylon itself. This was the dawn of modern siege artillery. And those ancient walls of Constantinople were about to be its first real test. But Mehmed's genius wasn't just about raw power. It was about pure audacity. He's facing that giant, unbreakable chain blocking the harbor. So what does he do? He does the one thing nobody could have ever predicted. He builds a road out of greased logs, and he physically drags his ships over land, up a hill, and down into the enemy's harbor. Can you imagine the shock for the defenders, waking up one morning to see an entire enemy fleet suddenly floating in the water they thought was perfectly safe? It was a psychological masterpiece. So with all his pieces on the board, Mehmed began the siege on April 6, 1453. And what followed was a brutal 53-day nightmare of constant cannon fire, desperation, and unbelievable endurance. It was just a relentless grind. The bombardment started in early April. Then on April 22nd came that incredible shock when the Ottoman ships just appeared in the Golden Horn. For weeks, the defenders fought back everything thrown at them. They repelled attacks, they even found and destroyed tunnels the Ottomans were trying to dig under the walls. But the pressure just never let up, and it all built to one final massive assault on May 29th. For weeks, those giant cannons just pounded away. But here's the thing, they took hours to reload. So after each massive blast, the Byzantines would frantically scramble to repair the damage. It became this desperate daily race, destruction versus repair, all day, every day. And the Ottoman attack was just ferocious. There was a Venetian surgeon there named Niccolò Barbaro who saw the Sultan's elite troops, the Janissaries, up close. He wrote that they were so disciplined, so proud, they were willing to let 10 of their own men die just to pull back the body of a single fallen comrade from the walls. It all came to a head on May 29th. After weeks of this, Mehmed ordered a massive final attack in 3 waves. The first 2 waves wore down the defenders, and then he sent in the 3rd wave, his absolute best soldiers, the Janissaries, who just charged the battered walls without stopping. In the middle of all that chaos, the general leading the defense was badly wounded, which caused a panic, and that's when the walls were finally breached. The last Roman emperor, Constantine XI, reportedly tore off his royal purple robes so he couldn't be identified and led a final suicidal charge right into the oncoming wave of invaders. He was never seen again, dying anonymously with his soldiers defending his city. And with the emperor dead and the walls broken, the city fell. But the fall of Constantinople wasn't just the end of a battle, it was the end of a whole chapter of human history, a major turning point for the entire world. This city, the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire, the great bastion of Christianity for more than 1,000 years, was now in the hands of the Ottoman Sultan. What followed was a period of looting and destruction that marked the final, bloody end of an ancient empire. They say that even Sultan Mehmed himself, the conqueror, was brought to tears when he finally rode into his grand prize and saw the devastation. He was heard saying, "What a city we have given over to plunder and destruction." And the consequences of this one day were just massive. First, the Roman Empire, after almost 1,500 years, was officially done. Many historians actually mark this day as the true end of the Middle Ages. Why? Well, think about all the Greek scholars who fled the city and went to Italy. They helped supercharge the Renaissance. And militarily, it proved that giant stone walls, the greatest defense for thousands of years, were now useless against gunpowder. A completely new age of warfare had begun. And that leaves us with one heck of a question to think about. What if the walls had held? What if they just held out a few more days and a relief fleet from Europe arrived in time? How different would the next 500 years of history look if, on that one day in 1453, the unbreakable city had refused to break?